I'd say that's absolutely true. You know, specifically, there are some things, there were lots of things that informed the making of all these albums, one of which was brought to my attention and which I've been fascinated by ever since he brought it to my attention, which was in the Abbey House Hotel one evening. I spent with my friend Jez Fielder, and he brought to my attention the story of Donald Crowhurst. And the story of Donald Crowhurst is fairly well documented in several films. But it's about a guy who kind of reached beyond his own abilities as a yachtsman, as it were. At the time, he wanted to better his life. There was a prize for £5,000, which was a lot of money back then. And he endeavoured to sail around the world in order to win that prize, and felt somewhat short. But I think in the narrative of his life there can be drawn many parallels to all of our everyday lives. You know, the sense that, and you know, that the fact that he was at sea for. Somebody said at the time it's a considerable. There's a considerable margin of difficulty in the fact that we as a species of people are not used to being on our own for vast lengths of time. We are social creatures. And I think part of the sort of madness into which he descended was purely brought upon by the fact that he spent, pretty much 9 months on his own, and with only his sea to comfort him, really. So that's one thing that I've sort of revisited on this album is the Don narrative. But not only that, I just think, there's a couple of sort of, well, there's one song particularly which relates to a period of my life. But the rest of it, there are some, there are some songs on here that particularly refer back to the larger, the camera zooming out narrative of the first three albums. Absolutely, that's absolutely the point. In fact, one of the things that in the lyrics to the INC, which is the sort of penultimate song on the album, one of the things that Donald Crowhurst did in his deception, I should point out that there was a deception that he was caught between a rock and a hard place, and unfortunately the boat wasn't ready by the time he set sail in it, and he realised fairly early on in his voyage that he wasn't going to be able to complete the voyage because the apparent watertight bulkheads were taking on water, and he wouldn't have been able to go around the Southern Ocean, and he would have drowned and died. But he realised that if he went back to England, he would lose everything. He would lose his house that he forfeited against a loan. And so what he did was he kept two logbooks, one of his real voyage and what he was really experiencing, and an invented logbook, which was basically detailing a sort of a fanciful voyage, which never actually. And he was a very intelligent guy, so he could estimate his journey. His daily. He'd just have to estimate, accurately his position using charts and working that mathematically. But he had two logbooks, and in the INC, I allude to the fact of dreaming in parallel. The fantasy world that we live in and the real world that we live in. So it's a very powerful theme. And absolutely 100% my fascination with it is because all he wanted to do was go home and be with his family and end the loneliness, and the solitude. So yeah, absolutely, that's the parallel. And that is the reason that I introduced him into the narrative in the first place. On A Godless Sea was the first time I sang about the story of Don.